From the vehicle specification screen, open the toolbox by selecting the toolbox icon. From the toolbox menu, select the oscilloscope tools, then DriverOnCoil ignition test. The DriverOnCoil ignition test can also be accessed from the toolbox menu by selecting Powertrain, then Ignition Tool, then DriverOnCoil ignition test. Touch the tick button. This will display the DriverOnCoil hookup instructions for configuring the VMM, current probe, and universal probe. When connecting the current probe, pay particular attention to the orientation of the probe indicated by the arrow located on the jaws of the probe. Incorrect probe orientation will result in a negative going current pulse. If this occurs, simply reverse the probe orientation. Also, pay close attention to the type of coil being tested. Depending on the coil type, connection of the universal probe to the PCM driver signal may be located at coil connector pin 1 for the rectangular body or coil connector pin 2 for the circular body. Once the connections are made, start the engine and touch the tick button. The oscilloscope will automatically configure and display the coil current on channel 3 and the PCM driver signal on channel 1. In this live example of a non-faulted coil, the coil driver signal from the PCM can be seen on channel 1 and the coil primary charge current on channel 3. Since the vehicle is at idle, the ignition coil is in restrike as indicated by more than one charge event. Increasing the engine RPM places the ignition system in the single strike mode. Once the RPM returns to idle, restrike is again enabled. Examples of DriverOnCoil waveform patterns for both normal and faulted drivers can be found by selecting the library icon in the lower left corner of the display. Select the DriverOnCoil option. Once in the DriverOnCoil help, you can select one of three options: Overview, an example of a normal DriverOnCoil pattern, and examples of faulted DriverOnCoil waveforms. Selecting the normal DriverOnCoil pattern shows the typical non-faulted current and PCM coil driver signal. Notice the coil is in single strike mode with a dwell period of 2.5 milliseconds. Returning to the options screen, select Examples of faulted DriverOnCoil waveforms. The sample waveforms shown here include missing driver signal, erratic or distorted driver signal, no driver signal from the PCM, open VPWR or ground to the coil, internal coil primary short, or high primary circuit resistance. Remember, before replacing any PCM, always test the harness for open and short circuits.